Crypto gaming, NFT gaming, Web3 gaming, GameFi, whatever it is you want to call it, has taken off over the past couple years, and I've been a witness to it.
Let's imagine for a second GameFi is like a rocket ship. I've spent the past 2 years on this rocket, traveling to the moon and back to Earth. It would be way too simple to blame NFTs for all GameFi's problems, and it would just be lazy to say blockchain gaming equals bad.
But there's something that isn't quite right about this rocket.
I think that most would agree that up to this point, this rocket is not in perpetual motion. We see the warning signs, but no matter how much fuel we put into it, it always seems like we're slowing down and ready to run out. Even in a space that's confusing and chaotic,
I don't see the point of giving up or falling in hopelessness. So I find myself in a constant pursuit of answers for all gamers. I do this for myself, as a way to make sense of this sector of the metaverse that I find myself in. I'm not willing to simply be a part of a system that I question my beliefs in. While I do not pretend to have all the answers, I've been delving deeper and deeper into GameFi economics and ecosystems over the past year. This has contributed to a whole new perspective on how things operate and what might be possible.
I want to share with you a vision of a gaming world I believe we can live in, as well as how I plan to navigate the crazy world of NFTs we live in right now. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. First, the problem. What is GameFi trying to solve, and what new problems is it causing? Next, I want to share the idea of one of the first games built on the blockchain. And finally, I want to build on these ideas and share the game that I believe takes this concept to a whole new level.
This is not a hit piece on crypto gaming, believe it or not. Although some of you might see it that way, and label me whichever way you want. That's okay. It doesn't bother me. GameFi is the intersection between gaming and finance. But in this video, I'm going to explore probably the most important part of gaming. What meaning does it bring to our lives?
Before I do that, I need to back up a little bit. I think I need to point out the fact that I have been a beneficiary of GameFi in many ways. And I would bet that many of you are, or will be soon. We've played games that brought enjoyment to our lives, some of which have been free to play, but it's those of you who have your money and time into GameFi that has allowed me to make a business without asking anything from you directly. In what ways has gaming been good to us? I know that sounds like a nerdy question to ask in this day and age. We have much easier access to a diverse set of gaming types and styles that our parents ever had, and it's easy for us to forget that. I think many of us would really struggle giving up the options we have access to today. I think about the incredible technological advances that have allowed me to get paid through gaming while helping others do the same.
The life I live now would have been an utter impossibility just a few years ago, and it would be ironic at best not to acknowledge that. So what about GameFi is worrying me?
I see it as mainly 2 things. This new type of gaming promotes a behavior that incentivizes making monetary returns. And 2, the lack of understanding mainstream gamers have and unwillingness to learn the blockchain technology and how it can revolutionize gaming.
I think those things are so much more important than we realize. And there are examples of this in many different industries.
But there are plenty of incentives in place for me to increase my allocation in these games. A lot of benefits, monetarily speaking, come about if I were to buy more digital gaming assets and lend them out in a format that attracts more gamers to play with them.
I'm in many ways disincentivized for playing the games just for the fun of it.
But that's what games were originally designed for. It appears that similar to any business, blockchain gamers are incentivized to seek out the more cost and time efficient way to get a return on their investment in order to compound and grow.
I'm not sure that's what I want. I'm not sure anyone really wants to optimize that way.
Most people want to play games just for fun. But now that more and more people are seeing that they can make a living from video games, playing video games just for fun is now in conflict with incentives that have been put in place to make financial gains through these games. And this is even more prominent with play-to-earn games. Some are being conditioned into thinking that the games must be played. Playing just when you want or for fun is not an option anymore. The value of a blockchain gamer is based on how committed they are to spending as much time needed to maximize the potential earning in that game, or to find others willing to spend that time.
If I had to come up with a term for this, it would be the tyranny of GameFi.
Because we are subjecting ourselves to a type of gaming where your value as a gamer is tied to the ROI you can produce rather than the fun you are having. This makes gaming more stressful than fun. In an attempt to answer these questions, I need to go back to the year 2018 and the development of Axie Infinity, which was a game built on the Ethereum blockchain. Axie Infinity is recognized as the first game that allowed for true ownership of in-game assets to scale up to over 1 million weekly active players.
That's one hell of an accomplishment for a completely new type of gaming.
Axie Infinity sought to solve one of the biggest problems in the traditional gaming world, and that was the fact that you could not truly own your in-game assets or monetize your time spent playing the games. Games like RuneScape and Warcraft naturally developed an economy based on in-game resources that required time to obtain. These resources could be traded against the terms and conditions of the developer on third-party web apps. There was a lot of risk when doing this, such as losing access to your entire account and everything within it. Axie Infinity had 3 ideas to solve this problem. Ethereum was a fairly new piece of technology that introduced smart contracts on the blockchain. These smart contracts meant programs could be run autonomously. To put it more simply,
if-then statements eliminated a middleman.
These smart contracts also allowed digital assets to be created that are verifiably unique. The term used for this was non-fungible tokens, or NFTs. Axie could build their game in a way that gave power back to the players. A game where the players can own their in-game assets and freely buy, sell, and trade with other players in a safe and unrestricted way. If players saw that they could have more freedom in gaming, Axie believed they would give their game a try. Secondly, Axie realized that the gamers were spending more and more time playing games, and the gaming industry was bringing in more and more money, and the players were not being compensated for that time. Axie thought, what if their players could generate a yield from playing their game? They developed a 2-token system, one of which was used for governance, similar to owning stock in a company, and the other token was used as an in-game reward for the players. This coin was also used for in-game purchases, such as breeding, which gave it value. At this point, they've solved the problem of true ownership for in-game assets in a yield generated from the time it took to play the game.
The third idea Axie Infinity had is what I believe to have been their Achilles heel.
And that was the gameplay itself. They wanted to create a game that incorporated a player versus environment mode and a player versus player mode. The game was a simple card game masked with cute creatures bouncing around the screen and visual effects that might have been groundbreaking in the late 90s. For a little while, the game worked as intended, and many people flocked to the game with the dream of making money from a video game. Critics will point to the game being in the crypto ecosystem and built on the blockchain as the reason it collapsed. But the hard truth is that it collapsed because the game just wasn't good enough. Axie Infinity opened the floodgates for developers to rush out poor quality games in order to capitalize on a booming crypto and metaverse market. These games were not built for fun. They were built to attract a new type of gamer with the promise of earning through their game. This resulted in a lot of people earning a lot of money and even more people losing money. But the worst part of it all is that it conditioned a lot of people to seek games not for the entertainment value, but for the monetary value. Playing video games used to be a stress reliever, and now for many people it was a job and only increased stress. Many people would turn to video games when they had spare time to play. Now they needed to play these games in order to get a chance to find some spare time to relax. This new idea of gaming was robbing people of the enjoyment video games were meant to bring to their lives. What seemed like a concept that would revolutionize gaming quickly became the red-headed stepchild of the industry.
Not all that came from this was bad. In the background, there were smart people who knew that Axie Infinity was onto something. People who believed blockchain technology really was the future of gaming. People who didn't rush out half-assed projects just to capitalize on a booming trend. People who knew they could take the concept that Axie brought to light to a whole new level. People who understand that above all else, the game needs to bring entertainment value. And that this entertainment value needs to meet or exceed what the current traditional gaming market is already providing. To put it simply, these games needed to be fun.
Now there are a number of projects who seem to be working towards this goal, with the likes of Gala Games, Big Time, Undead Blocks, and Star Atlas. But there's one game I believe that's leading the pack, and that game is Illuvium. It's actually not fair to just call Illuvium a game. They're developing a universe of interoperable blockchain games. They've even coined this as a brand new type of game, an interoperable blockchain game, or IBG for short. The co-founders are taking the problems that Axie solves from traditional gamers and developing an ecosystem of games that people will actually want to play and even spend money inside of. Illuvium has collectability like Pokemon, as well as unique lovable characters that lead to deep connections with gamers. They have the competitive player versus player gameplay that Teamfight Tactics brings. The stunning environments, similar to those that Avatar used to capture their audience, all built on the blockchain so that gamers get the feel of what Ready Player One introduced to so many people. To solve the problem, we must go to the source. Kieran Warwick and his brothers and co-founders, Grant and Aaron, have an interesting theory and perspective that others don't seem to understand.
I think that makes for a really interesting conversation. They want to put the players first.
I think in this day and age, all we see are giant gaming companies nickeling and diming their player base. These games sometimes seem more about how they can extract as much money as possible from their player base than providing entertainment value.
And can you really blame these traditional gaming companies? There should be a conversation about the responsibility of the gamers themselves.
Gamers are playing these games and accepting that once they are done with a particular game, they won't get anything back. Responsibility is shared. Just as much as these gaming companies should be making an effort to put their players' needs over their bottom line, it's also the gamers themselves that need to ask and demand for changes. Think about it. In a sense, if there's no demand for any particular game, it would just collapse. These gaming studios exist because the gamers allow them to exist. Every choice you make in your day is a compromise. You compromise taste for quality. You compromise comfort for health. And when you choose to play a game, you compromise your time and sometimes even your money. But imagine if that time you're spending playing those games was worth something, monetarily speaking.
I'd like to share with you some ideas from the Illuvium team, and I find these ideas very powerful.
The Illuvium co-founders recognized that it wasn't enough just to have a fun game, a game that allowed true ownership, and a game that monetizes your time. They went a step further and said that there will be a fair launch. This meant everyone will start the game on an even playing field. Whether you are rich or poor, there's no way to purchase any in-game assets from Illuvium to give you an unfair advantage. The team also decided that instead of building a game behind closed doors, they would be transparent about the development and direction in which the game evolves. To do this, they decided Illuvium wouldn't be a company, it would be a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO for short. This meant if the community spoke loud enough, they could not only influence the production of the game, they could outright change the course completely. The transparency of the development and community they have built is truly one of a kind. This team is constantly providing more and more value to its community with a vision that spans decades.
This is what GameFi needed. As a matter of fact, this is what all games need. They just don't know it yet. I recently turned 34. That's a third of a century. And it's making me think a lot about how I've approached gaming up until this point in my life, and where I'd like to see it go if I'm lucky enough to have another third of a century. What's the type of gaming I want to experience? And I'll actually go a step further. What is the world I want to live in?
I think this is sparked by the idea that I believe we must have the freedom in gaming that most of us believe we have in our lives. It's not going to be just handing it to the systems that are already in place, who don't take the players into consideration. I think of this like a personal journey, and while thinking about the life that I want to live in the world that I want to live in, I've noticed a pattern that seems to be the common denominator. A sense of all the things that bring the most meaning in my life, and it's the things that cannot be measured or counted. I want to trust that my time in gaming is not wasted, and I want to play for the pure enjoyment of that game. We have higher needs outside of the returns in our games, and we cannot get lost in the tyranny of GameFi. Early GameFi adopters are kind of funny. We see it as our job to make sense of these gaming economies and how they work, but there's a bit of a conundrum that we have to solve, which is some gamers play games that don't give any returns because they want to do what they love. GameFi enthusiasts may not think that that makes a whole lot of sense. Why would people spend time playing a game for nothing when they can monetize their time playing? People are not supposed to be wasting time, right? The answer to this conundrum is a concept I'm calling psychic gaming, a non-material satisfaction that comes with gaming activity. I guess you could say all of the best parts of gaming aren't uniquely transactional, for profit or for consumption. To each their own.
I want to live a GameFi-filled life. And to do that, I must take ownership in the role I play on where this rocket ship is going.